Hey, deserving listeners, this is part 9 in my series in which I talk about the fight between Jimmy and Chelsea and also branching off into other seasons and comparing and contrasting with other couples that, at least on the surface, it looks like they are similar. I can't know if they're similar really because it's just a reality TV show, but I want to use this as a jumping off point to talk about real things clinically that I have observed. Let's watch.
How was the little conversation with Cole at the pool party?
So another topic is jealousy. I haven't really been even using that word, but of course I've been talking about the concept of jealousy this entire time, right? It's a primary focus and trigger for these individuals. So to remind you, and I'm not diagnosing Matt, we had far less data from Matt than especially Chelsea, well really both, Danielle, but I just want to point out that at the very least, this hints of that, and if I were to treat him, this would be something I would investigate just like with the others. And with Matt, they just had the pool party, and Colleen and Cole, but particularly Cole was flirting with Colleen, and Colleen was just kind of going along with it and was a little a deer in headlights. And we see him, he's miffed. That's the emotional abuse, is that even though you can't really put your finger on anything verbal, it's the body language, it's the message, which is, you fucked up, and now I will punish you emotionally. I'm going to withdraw, I'm going to punish you by not being nice to you, but I'm also you're going to know that I am thinking that you fucked up. That's abusive over time and in the moment, and you see the effect on Colleen already. They I don't know if the cameras arrived in the middle of the fight or they cut out the beginning or the fight. I don't know. But when the scene begins, you can already see that Colleen and it's interesting how each of the recipients of this will react differently. If Matt wanted to be upset, there's a difference between expressing your concern or feeling sad or even feeling jealous and being dominant and intimidating and punishing. It's a completely different thing. You're free to have jealousy. You're free to be hurt. You're free to have a complaint, but it's the tone of voice. It's the message. And for people that do this, most of them are not setting out to intimidate or harm. It feels right to communicate this way. And with awareness, they can stop. And with effort, they can heal.
Was you're a cute guy, and in the real world, sure.
What's the real world?
In the real world, I don't have, with Cole, I don't even know who that person is. With you, I know who you are.
Yeah, but you didn't tell him that though, right?
I did.
Almost identical. To me, it's the same scenario. You have Jimmy and Nick and Colleen all trying to rationalize their way out of this. That they believe, if you just understand how I feel, because I trust that Nick and Colleen and Jimmy, none of them were trying to get with anyone else, especially at this point. And yet to be treated like at least that's a high possibility, even if you did twirl AD around, okay, maybe that was inappropriate. Saying to you that I thought that she was stacked, okay, maybe that was inappropriate, but do you think that I want to be with that person? What do you think, that I don't love you? I'm going to marry you. I'm going to spend the rest of my life with you. I'm dedicated. You can accuse me of being inappropriate, or you can tell me not to do that, but to go from being upset that I did something wrong to I'm a horrible person or I never loved you, it's really a lot, and that's what Matt is doing to her. And of course, this escalates.
I've been played before, all right? I get it.
Yeah, and the schema, right? I've been played before, and it's happening again. And we, I think, all would agree it's not happening again, Matt. And I think even Matt eventually comes around and admits that as well. It's not nothing's happening. You could have a complaint. I didn't like that you stuck around and talked with him for a while. I didn't like that, but I know that you love me, and could you just not do that again? Because I've been hurt before. That's totally fine as a request, and I would imagine most partners would be like, oh, okay, yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. I'll try to watch that. Take it from me, I didn't want to be with Cole. That wasn't a thing.
You're attracted to
You
me?
did.
Cool. I'm glad. That's my man. None of the fucking girls told me I was attractive and they were attracted to me and they wanted to be with me. And if they
No, he
did, I
told
would have
me.
shut it down and said, I got my eyes on one girl. I don't give a fuck what you think about me. I got my eyes on one girl.
Yeah.
So you see that pain. With Jimmy and Nick, they are probably also feeling a version of that pain, but they don't show it because they've been socialized as men, and they might be also avoidantly attached, so they might not even really identify with it. Colleen has a better time identifying with it and feeling it and showing it. And I want to point that out as well, that just because they don't show it doesn't mean they're not having extreme pain as well. Maybe even more because they don't allow themselves to express it at all. So, but at the very least, we see with Colleen that emotion, that defeatedness, and maybe I am a piece of shit. Yeah, that's what this kind of behavior, this relationship, this onslaught, and you could argue it's in the gaslighting direction. Eventually, you're just like, yeah, I am a horrible person, and it's hard to watch.
Can I take a minute?
And with the Jimmys and the Nicks that I work with, I try to get them to show this emotion because it can be healthy for them to just feel their emotion and express it, but also it signals to the other person what's really happening for you. And if you're actually trying to improve the relationship, having that emotion and having that known to the other person can help. And I think it does. Like if she were to be more like Laura, for example, from season 6, then we could imagine this escalating a lot further than it did. But given that she's sad, it's affecting her. She feels hurt. She's expressing that. Matt, cares, just like Danielle and just like Chelsea. They care. But unless you show them something to care about, it just doesn't register, and or it looks like another reason that you don't love the person. To cry, Matt will interpret this, I'm guessing, as, oh, this matters to her, and therefore my paranoia is maybe not accurate.
We have 4 weeks to get married. And for you to tell people that they're attractive people as an engaged woman, he's a cute guy.
And the parallels of insecurity. You have Danielle in season 2 watching Nick talk with a woman and everyone else at the party while she's watching over the rail. You have season 3 with Matt watching the interaction between Cole and Colleen. From my memory, Matt only heard some of the conversation. I remember thinking, if he hears the whole conversation, I think it'll be worse, actually. And it was a little interesting because it did look like Colleen was possibly receptive to what Cole was saying, but when Colleen later explains, it's like, I just didn't know what to say. I didn't want to be insulting. And, the sort of person that Colleen is, we can imagine that she's an accommodator. And in her heart, she was like, well, she did care about Cole and she did connect with him, so maybe there's a little grain of hope or connection there or something. But I was under the impression that Colleen was just like, this is uncomfortable, I don't know what to do. Oh, okay, sure. And just going along with it. But anyway, so that insecurity. And then with Chelsea, with AD, with Jess, with friends that are women, it's all around. If someone with these schemas looks for it, they will find threats. And they will focus on them and exaggerate them and be convinced of them.
In the real world, whatever happens, happens, right?
No.
So fuck me, right?
No.
You're gonna tell me you love me and shit like that, but fuck me, right?
I'm fighting for you.
What are you talking about?
Yeah, and then the contempt. And it's a different style. I think some people might be tempted to say it's a more male style, and maybe there's some elements to that. It's impossible, at least for me, to separate gender from this scenario, but I hesitate to do that because I've treated so many people with this kind of behavior, and gender, it doesn't have any bearing on it, believe me. A woman can be just as contemptuous, and, I'm trying to think, did we see that with Chelsea and with Danielle? Not really, not in this style. But anyway, at the very least, it's another version of this. I don't know if it's borderline, but if I saw this, it would be an hypothesis that I would pursue. At the very least, I would pursue a schema that was developed when he was young, related to relational traumas of abandonment and betrayal, and the lessons that were codified in his set of assumptions about the world, about him, and that lens that he sees the world through, and understanding his emotions and healing from that. That's a big part of the treatment of this sort of thing, is to go back in time and rework the narratives, because, the children will blame themselves, and they'll also say, well, all people are like this, but that's not the case. It was just everyone in their world, because their world was so small. But that whole narrative has to be healed. And also all those negative lessons about themselves deserving and everything, all that has to be unpacked and looked at and reevaluated and metabolized, and it takes a long time.
What are you talking about?
I only have eyes for you, Matt.
Bro, what? You got your eyes on one person. You
I
should
do.
at least.
I only
You
have
should have.
It's not like that.
Stop. This is fucking ridiculous. Bro, I'm not gonna get fucking played, Colleen.
And I forgot the details of this, but Colleen isn't presenting anything to further his upsetness. She's doing a lot to help if he was wondering, if he didn't have a schema, if he didn't have relational traumas that result in the transference that's happening right now. She's doing a lot, and it doesn't matter. Just like it didn't matter to Chelsea or Danielle. No matter what Nick and Jimmy or Colleen do, it's just going to happen.
You're done?
I might be.
No, come on. I'm gonna get straight up. I didn't know how to react to that kind of situation.
Hold on, do you hear yourself? You were engaged.
I forgot this detail too. So she closes the door. She said, I don't want this on camera. Maybe, this will help or something. And she's whispering, and she still has a microphone on her, And so, yeah, she's working hard. She's doing something very similar to what Jimmy was doing, and to some extent Nick as well. And from my memory, it doesn't work. Because if I remember right, this eventually leads to him leaving, and then he's talking with the producers and saying, like, you would act the same way, right? And I'm guessing the producer's like, no.
To me, and you did not know how to respond to somebody.
And just as an example of a different reaction, think of what Chelsea did watching Kwame and Micah. And at the time, I was wondering, well, maybe Chelsea doesn't really love Kwame, but they got married, so we could assume that Chelsea was very in it to win it at that pool scene. And the scene was something. I mean, it was nothing even close to what Cole and Colleen were doing. Nothing even close to what Jimmy and AD were doing. It was shocking what was happening there. And they were both participating. We had the lapel mics. We could hear them both. When they talk about cutting the sexual tension with a knife, you would need a whole chainsaw. So Chelsea watched that and eventually left. And we didn't see or hear about anything close to what Danielle and Matt and Chelsea did. It was some other reaction. It was hurt, it was pain, but it wasn't control and intimidation and contempt and tearing somebody down. It wasn't that. Because Chelsea apparently doesn't have those schemas, doesn't have those relational traumas. That's the difference. And or did and has recovered sufficiently.
I'm telling you that they are attracted to you. That's all I need to hear. I'm gonna tell how I feel, and we're on 2 different pages.
No, please tell me.
No, I'm out.
And that's why I love doing this right now because as a professor, I will explain reactivity or differentiation or personality disorders or jealousy or relational traumas or modes of schemas, and I'll explain it, and I feel like I can do my best to download that experience that I've had into my students' minds. But to actually watch it, right? To have these stories and have them play out in actual real time. And for us to, and I commend all the folks on this show for giving us this. It's a rare thing. It demonstrates so much. And for me to convey this to you, right? For me to talk about jealousy and on the podcast, it's just talking myself or me with other people. And you can describe things pretty well, but to see it, to actually provide the example, see what Chelsea did, see well, two Chelseas. I didn't realize that. You might have been confused earlier. Right, you had Seattle Chelsea and Charlotte Chelsea. Those two reactions, very, very different. Same, because often in the discourse around these kind of shows there is an assumption that the reactions of the people that you liked, people that you identified with, are of course, they're just automatic. They make sense. They're a given, right? Of course, that's what that person did because that's the right thing to do. When we like someone, I think particularly when reality TV audiences like someone, they just agree. Like, yeah, that was good and that was bad based on, again, how it feels, not based on an evaluation of the objective data. You can have a feeling about it, but you have to start with the objective data. And it in my opinion, it's fairly objective data to look at the reactivity between Seattle Chelsea, Charlotte Chelsea, Matt, and Danielle. Each reaction is different. I'm thinking there's others too. Well, I guess, Micah was with Paul. So Paul reacted very differently to Micah and Kwame. I think Paul might have seen it a little less because him and Zach were like in another area. They just bounced from the pool scene. So I think that's pretty stark, right? It's pretty good. It's particularly when, again, Kwame and Micah were 100 times more flirting and presenting an actual problem. What Jimmy was doing with AD, what Colleen was doing with Cole, what Nick was doing at the party, those are small potatoes, if non-existent. Kwame and Micah, you had an actual thing, and then you have Paul and Chelsea with just completely different reactions. It's not that us humans have just the same general reactions given what's happening. All of us are filtering everything through our perceptual lens and our schemas. All of us are subjective perceivers of reality, which affects how we feel about things, which affects how we react. He, right now, Matt, is 100% sure that she has completely betrayed him. And similar to Danielle sitting in the room, the hotel room, just stewing in her own pain and spiraling, and similar to Chelsea as the party progresses and she's spiraling downward, or when Jimmy goes out with his friends and she's spiraling downward because Mackenzie calls and it triggers her. The more time that goes on, the deeper they go. With Matt, he's watching Colleen and Cole talk, and it's going on. Even if it's just 5 minutes, that's a lot of spiraling, and it gets more intense. And maybe by the time they finally get to talk about it, it's really run away with itself. That's what happens.
I'm out. It's very simple. It's very simple.
I don't want you to change, but it don't feel the same.
Hey, for real, take this mic off me, man. Take this shit off me. I'm out, bro.
I don't want him to leave.
Yeah, I forgot that he actually wanted to leave. He wanted to break up with her right there. I mean, I get that he's hurt for sure. I don't think everyone would have been, but at the very least would have been a little hurtful, right? He just met her in person, and there she is talking to, because I believe Cole broke up with her, right? And then Cole picked Zenib. So, yeah, if you're Matt, you're like, I'm second, and I'm already at a deficit, and there she is over there talking to him. yeah, okay, little hurt, but the way she reacted, and he didn't really even give her a chance, but she did sneak it in. She's like, I didn't know what to say. Now, having said that, like I said earlier, it wouldn't be strange if she did have some feelings. Not that that would change her mind about being with Matt. Clearly, they're still married, right? But, it would be reasonable. It's just a really hard situation. I mean, and the show does it. I don't know if it's on purpose, but I'm sure it is, actually. I mean, why a pool, right? But they are all, several of them are getting real tweaked, which is, just imagine for yourself. You've just fallen in love with someone, and then all of a sudden their former partner, you have to like socialize with them. When I put it that way, that's like rough on people. But we see different reactions. We see some more functional and some less.
I'm scared that he's trying to like tap out, and I don't want to lose him, so I don't care what I have to do. Like, who cares? That's people pleasing. Like, I don't give a fuck. Like, I don't want to lose him.
And I swear to goodness, people who always claim that everything is faked and scripted, I mean, maybe I'm just gullible, but boy, does this look real. Is some of it? Sure. But all the scenes I've been watching in this series, it doesn't get any more real than this to me.
So whatever I have to do, I have to do. Sorry, guys. Can you give me a second?
And while I'm on that topic, so few reality TV shows actually accomplish this. 90 Day Fiancé has moments of this at times for sure, but it's kind of few and far. Like I watched Mary and what's his name? Mary from the Philippines, and the guy. They had some real scenes with Mary having some very intense emotions that looked very real. Relational traumas and jealousy and control. Don't turn your head at church. Don't look at other people. You can't have friends. You can't hang out with your sister. You can't hang out with your mom. It's the same thing. Do we all think Mary is conniving and, waking up in the morning like, I'm going to like get my hooks into him? No, Mary, we know her history. It is horrific and it's reactivity, but in the end, it's abusive. It's control from a number, and you could imagine someone resorting to physically hitting somebody, which is what most people consider when they think of abuse. But the vast majority of the time, it's hard to gauge these things, but a lot of the volume, when you consider the whole volume of abuse, a small percentage involves physical violence. And maybe a little bit more small percentage involves the threat of physical violence. But the vast majority is what we watch on the show. It's intimidation, it's punishing, it's putting down, it's rejection, it's just the onslaught of accusation and hostility. It really is hard. You're receiving all of it. And I know some of you have been through it and you know what it's like, and it's horrible. And some of you are probably going through it right now. And my hope, if it's one thing that this long-ass series accomplished, is for one person to have a question mark in their head of, maybe I don't deserve this. Maybe I deserve better. And then that begins the road to safety and recovery and getting out.
Should I not be upset at that? If your wife came up to you and said that some guy told her that she was cute, and then she in turn said that you're cute as well in the real world, if you were to buy me a drink?
Yeah. If we're just talking about that, sure. But the punishment and the rejection and throwing away a relationship that apparently is good because they're still together and married is unreasonable, right? And making her feel that way. It looks purposeful, right? But it feels balanced. It's not uncommon for people in Matt's shoes to actually feel, look, I'm the hurt one. Okay, she's hurt, but I'm the one that's really hurt here. And it's that imbalance, like with Danielle and Nick. Danielle walks away from that second fight going like, sure, maybe I was a little unfair, but what he did to me, right? It's imbalanced because it feels that way. And it always was that way when they were children. And so it just gets locked in and transferred. So anyway, Now, I'm not calling any of these people abusive. I'm not calling any of them borderline or even preoccupied attached. I don't know. I'm just using it as a jumping off point. And there's a good chance that with Matt, once he felt secure enough with Colleen, he never or barely ever exhibited anything close to this. Let's hope for that, and that is possible for sure. Absolutely. Actually, I want to watch that one scene later where he's really melting down. I just want to watch a snip because I'm actually curious.
What did you tell her?
I told her I was going back to the apartment and she said she was gonna meet me here.
Okay.
And instead of coming back with me, she went to the fucking club.
Yeah.
Bro, how would you not, you would...
I would be pissed.
Yeah, there's some detail that he is ignoring, similar to the details that were ignored by Chelsea and by Danielle. And yeah, the way he painted it, I remember in the moment thinking, well, Colleen doesn't seem like the sort that would just be like, screw you, I'm going to cheat on you in the clubs, leave me alone. Like, that's the way he's painting it. But I think what happened was he said, I don't want to do this, or I just want to go home or something. And she didn't even know he was upset or something like that. I don't know if I want to go down that rabbit hole, but I just wanted to show this other scene here.
Off too, obviously, yeah, but I'm trying to say, like, this is not the end of it. Like, we don't have to pack the bags and get out of here.
Tell me how to stay. Tell me how to stay, because I'm out.
You've been looking for a fucking problem the whole time here, dude.
Yeah, and so Bartise points that out and probably knows a lot more. There's probably a lot more things that are happening. Similar to Danielle and Chelsea, you're just looking for a reason to break up. You keep inventing things.
Maybe I have.
You've been looking for a problem. No, y'all have
But where is she now?
Y'all have had no problems, dude.
Why is she
I'm
not
jealous
doing
of where you are, bro. You have had no...
And Matt, I think, exhibiting more health, reaches out immediately to Bartise, maybe even knowing that Bartise will talk him off the ledge, so to speak, and he's receptive. He's not just blowing off Bartise. Whereas with Chelsea and with Danielle, at least we never saw a scene like that where they went to somebody and received some feedback that would help them, right? The fact that Matt can even tolerate this and listen to it indicates that there's some flexibility there with him.
problems with Colleen, the girl that you fucking love, a girl that you found attractive at the day that you fucking were revealed to her, okay? I would pay money to be in the situation you're in, okay? You are set. Have a conversation.
And kudos to Bartise. I don't know if very many people like him overall, but this is, it seems to be working. I mean, he might literally be the reason why Matt and Colleen are married today. I don't know. Maybe they even see it that way.
Love each other no matter what happens tomorrow. Fuck, dude, I want to be in your situation.
I get it, you're jealous of the connection that we have, but is that connection really real? I don't want to be with a girl that's going to be out till fucking...
Right, so that's the central paranoia and concern without, I can't remember the exact details and I don't want to bother looking into it really, but from my memory, when she describes the whole situation, she clearly wasn't just like, I want to ditch you and go out with my friends. But even if she had, like, my wife will, we do this, we don't do this to each other, but, if it's a guy's night or a girl's night, it's like, I want to say women's night. Anyway, because it's ladies' night and I'm feeling right. Oh, what an, ooh. I used to love Cool and Gang when I was a kid. Still do. I'm losing my mind. So, I mean, just a smooth voice, just and real, like it's real kind of stripped down funk. Anyway, so we will have moments like that. Sometimes I'll just take myself out of the equation because I want her to not have me as a third wheel, right? So there's nothing wrong with Colleen going out with her friends. Is it bachelorette party night? I think it's, anyway. It's not inherent that she is cheating. There's no precedent that she's going to hook up with some random guy at the clubs. Is it okay that he's just like, I feel rejected or I'm a little worried or okay, but I'm going to call off what is potentially a union between two soulmates. I'm just willing to throw that all away because of that, but I think it's also that she did not reject him, that he has invented a scenario, just the way Chelsea said you were with Jess last night. Which, looking back at that, I wonder if from the very beginning, when he left and Mackenzie calls, that was the primary focus, was Jess. She's the evil witch. She's the threat, maybe even she's more appealing than I am or something. But at the very least, she's the other woman. He's with her. He's with her. He's with her. And all of that fight, she was avoiding trying to say that because she knew she didn't have any actual data about that. And so it was all these other things. And then eventually the Jess thing. I don't know. Oh, and another thing that I haven't said that I want to say is that when you come across someone who has these qualities, whether we call it borderline, preoccupied attachment, something, when you first meet them and you're falling in love, it can feel intoxicating because not only is your love being received and reciprocated, but your partner is so in love with you and they are so appreciative of your love and attention. Like with Jimmy and Chelsea, I think that Jimmy actually might have fallen in love with her partially because of that, which is normal. When you love someone and they're just like, yeah, I love you too. That's different than, oh my God, and this is where love bombing comes up. I haven't talked about that either, that love bombing on the internet is this volitional, malicious, psychopathic act, and sometimes it can be, but most of the time it is inadvertent. The individual is love bombing, but they just think they're loving, and they just think that they're withdrawing and punishing at times because something real actually happened when it didn't. And so anyway, it can be very intoxicating. If you've ever been in that situation, as a romantic partner, it's hard to deny. It's hard to walk away from that, especially if you don't know what you're looking at. And as a therapist, it's very intoxicating too, because as therapists, most of us hopefully are trying to help people. And when a client comes around with conditions and with traumas and reactivity in this area, they often will be very appreciative of the therapist and idealize the therapist, because there's that black and white between idealization and devaluation. And it's black or white. It's split either or. It's not anything in between. And as a therapist, especially in the beginning, so at the very beginning, you might feel like, wow, this person really takes to therapy, because people with this sort of condition will be fairly emotional and psychologically minded because their preoccupation and hypervigilance has trained them since they were 2 years old to pay a lot of attention to it. They might not know a lot of lingo or jargon or something, but they have a lot to say. You talk to an avoidant person or narcissistic person about their emotions or experience or inner world, and they don't have access to it, and they don't really have much to say. So it can be hard to grab on. Preoccupied and borderline people, there's a lot to grab onto, and as a therapist, it feels very gratifying, especially if you have a lot of clients that aren't really working really hard. People with borderline, in the beginning they work very hard, really throughout, but they come across as very appealing clients, generally speaking. Then the second phase is they'll start to idealize you because you are a trustworthy, secure attachment, and then they really are appreciative, and you can feel it, and they take your advice, and they tell you that, in between sessions, they're thinking about, the things that you have helped them with, and it's all true. They're not lying at all. It's an oasis for them in a vast desert of being neglected and harmed. You're safe, and they have been shown that, and they're finally experiencing that, and they are appreciative of it. But then comes the trigger, the landmine, whatever we call it, and the person will be very, very hurt, and they will spiral, and they will, black and white, they will devalue, and it's all or nothing. And suddenly, as a therapist, you are being attacked. And unless you, as a therapist, have the knowledge of the possibility, given the idealization in the beginning, it will blindside you, and you, at the very least, you'll be destroyed emotionally more than otherwise, but you'll also not react well to the client. For people that know, like myself and other therapists like me, will experience that, what you could call love bombing or idealization from a client, and on some level, our ego is appreciative of that, but on another level, it's a warning flag. We don't know because we haven't seen it yet, but we are at the ready, and we are also reminding ourselves not to be dependent on their approval or their compliments of us, and to keep the frame of therapy up, to remain boundaried, to remain differentiated and ready, close and in contact, but knowing that this is not a friendship and I don't depend on this client emotionally. I don't depend on them. That can happen, especially if you have your own attachment insecurities, things are going to shit in your life, and a client comes around and starts appreciating you, and you have no one else appreciating you in your life, you start to depend on it. And then when the client turns on you, it is painful. And at the very least, like I said, you'll suffer a lot more than otherwise, but you might harm the client in a variety of ways. So there's that. But even in romantic relationships, that sort of feeling, and it can be very attractive, it can be very compelling, and it can afterwards, if you leave that relationship and have a romantic relationship with someone that isn't in this camp, it can feel like something's always missing, because it's sort of like for bipolar folks that miss being hypomanic. On one level, they know that although I loved being hypomanic, the whole thing of bipolar was destructive. I wish I could just have the hypomania, but you can't. With bipolar, you either have it or you don't. Similar to this, it's like, I wish I could just have that energy, that infatuation and security. And so that's how these people fit together, is that you have the borderline person that has always been rejected and are just desperate for security and loyalty and dedication. And you have another person who probably also has similar relational traumas, but has dealt with it through avoidance. But deep down, they are borderline as well, at least on the spectrum, and they desperately want connection, but they don't pursue, they run, but they are desperate for that connection. The borderline person comes around and forces their way in. The avoidant person dates someone that is secure, and there's a normal progression and a normal expression and a normal level of dependence on the avoidant person. But to the avoidant person, that won't always work, because for the secure person, they're coming at, but they're not going to pursue, right? They're going to say, hey, let's love each other. And then the avoidant person doesn't do anything. And eventually the secure person is like, oh, I guess there's nothing there. The avoidant person subconsciously is just waiting for someone to invade because they want to be close. And the preoccupied borderline person invades, forces their self in. Then the avoidant person finally has closeness, and it's just intoxicating to them because they also have never had that before. So it can be this yin and yang thing, and they're both participating in it, each of them having similar versions of the relational traumas, but having different reactivity developed when they were young, maybe related to gender socialization, but there's plenty of men that are borderline, plenty of women that are avoidant and narcissistic. So that's another thing I would talk about. I also am reminded that there's another couple that I've mentioned, is Zenib and Cole, and I don't want to watch those scenes, but I've already kind of laid them out. I primarily just wanted to provide an example of what it can look like potentially for a man to exhibit these behaviors. I don't know if I'm reading it right, but in terms of the indications that would lead to developing an hypothesis that would be explored in therapy, the behaviors that we're seeing it's all in that realm. So thank you for indulging me on this journey. So last night after I got done watching the fight between Chelsea and Jimmy, and I unwound, I played this video game called Jagged Alliance 3, if you're an XCOM fan like I am. Anyway, and then I kept thinking about it, and I kept thinking about Nick and Danielle, and I had mentioned that I wanted to go back and sort of do some comparison. I woke up this morning and I'm still thinking about it, and I edited, all the video. It takes me a long time to edit all that stuff, largely because I edit out a lot of boring shit that I say, which might surprise you because it's like, oh, there's a lot of boring stuff left in. Yeah, well, imagine what I cut. I also have to clean everything up. But anyway, I just kept, I've been upset, because in my head I'm like, I should go back to the show for the fans so that I can continue watching the show. But I'm just like, I have to have closure. I have to. Plus, I was thinking about this as well, that, like I said a long time ago, when I am dead and somebody wants to post some example that represents my work and my podcastery and my model, my understanding of humans, and my passion, and why I became a therapist, and why I still am a therapist, and why I'm a professor, and why I supervise people, and why I am passionate about this, and even like kind of a glimpse into the way I see my own marriage. These episodes are those episodes. You could throw everything else away. And I wanted the episodes to be in sequence. I didn't want there to be 6 and then like a couple more later. I wanted it to be like one chunk that were all published at the same time. They're all numbered. It's in the playlist. They're all together. So that's why I'm doing this. But I don't know. This has been so satisfying to me to make these connections instead of just talking about them. And regardless of whether it's interesting to anyone else, I feel satisfied. So if you're watching this still, thanks for going along with me. But I don't know. I would imagine if I were an audience member, I'd be like, oh, And if you want me to do this maybe after season 6 is over and kind of do a quick comparison across different scenarios like this, to jump around. Because, when I'm watching the show, I'm watching sequentially, chronologically, and I'm just going off my memory of what happened. But it's really interesting to watch the scene and contrast the behavior. I think it's really interesting. I think it's totally fascinating. It's just, why I became a therapist and why I still am. I don't know. I just think it's fascinating. Plus, I can relate to everyone. I can relate to Matt. I can relate to Colleen. I can relate to Nick. I can relate to Chelsea. I can relate to Danielle. I can relate to Nick. I think that's why people watch reality TV, because whether we know it or not, there's a little bit of them in all of us. And they're just expressing it and, showing the world. So, and I remember when I decided to become a therapist, I had already been doing this kind of thing where I would really think about why people are the way they are. Why am I the way I am? And when it just popped into my head when I was 24 to become a therapist, this enjoyment that I'm having right now was a major factor in me realizing this was the career for me. So I hope this wasn't a waste of your time. And everyone out there, please take care of yourself, because you deserve it. You really, really do.